Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Rarity, Pinkie, Pi, Ditzy, Luna and more Anthro ponies. Part 4. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. A few days had passed since the Nightmare Moon incident, and Ponyville was getting back to some semblance of being normal. The citizens of the small town had been rather busy cleaning up and repairing all the structures that had been damaged during the incident. Many of the business owners would find themselves swamped with paperwork and having to adjust their schedules, while others who were in the work field of carpentry and such found themselves earning profit thanks to increased demand of tools and materials needed for repairs. Naruto woke up with a stir and yawned, still exhausted from last night's events. For the past few days he found himself running ragged to assist the elements with their newfound celebrity status. With the exception of Twilight, who was in Canterlot gathering her things for her move into the town, the other elements had found themselves being swamped by the townspeople. Both ponies like Rarity and Pinkie Pie were thrilled, the former because of the attention it gave to her business and Pinkie Pie because she was, well, Pinkie Pie and enjoyed hanging out and having fun with just every pony. It was great. Rainbow Dash out of all of them probably loved it the most. The reason was easy to note, seeing that the two got along pretty great due to how well they related to each other in many matters. It had to deal with her self-esteem and near egotistical bravado. While a lot of ponies in town saw a lean and defined Pegasus athlete, it took either a Pegasus or someone who understood Pegasus to understand that Rainbow's massive wings and shorter than normal Pegasus stature set her apart from the norm. Applejack was in the middle, enjoying the interest because it meant better business for the farm, while also hating because most of them only either gawked, took her attention away from her duties on the farm, or pestered her about something or another she didn't care about. The one pony who wasn't absolutely thrilled about it was Fluttershy. Her crippling shyness and nice nature made it impossible for her to shoo ponies away, resulting in one or more of the elements, and even in some cases, Naruto having to drive away the vultures. It didn't help that a lot of newcomers were clueless to Fluttershy's sensitivity issues, so that had been a whole issue in itself. As he finished getting ready for the morning, a knock on the door gained his attention. He opened the door where two armed royal guards were at his door. "Is there something I can help you with today, gentlecoats? You're the stallion known as Naruto, correct?" the guard on the right asked him. He was slightly taller than Naruto with an ash gray coat and jet black mane and ocean blue eyes. "Yes, I'm Naruto." This time the guard on the left spoke. His coat was that of a deep honey color with sky blue eyes and a gray mane, with bangs hanging just above his eyes. "You've been summoned for an audience with Her Majesty, Princess Celestia. We've been ordered to escort you to the castle immediately." "Very well, just let me lock up," Naruto answered them, repressing a sigh. Once his home was locked up, the blonde got in the chariot. Naruto took the opportunity to simply take in the control side as they traveled. Before he knew it, they had arrived on the castle grounds. After exiting the chariot, Naruto began making his way towards the castle. He was already quite familiar with the layout of the castle. The guards led him to where the princess was waiting. "Yes?" Celestia's voice called out from the other side. "Your Highness. We have brought Naruto to you as ordered," one of the guards responded. "Thank you. Please send him in." "Yes, Your Highness." The two guards pushed the door open to allow Naruto in. "Thank you both for your service. I will be speaking with Naruto privately, so I ask you return to your post of standing at the door," she said to the guards. "Yes, Your Highness." The two of them responded as the doors behind them locked. "Good morning, Princess Celestia," Naruto greeted her with a bow. Celestia let out a soft sigh, knowing that it was pointless to ask the blonde not to refer to her by her title. "A good morning to you as well, Naruto," she greeted him as she led the blonde to her desk. The blonde took the seat opposite of her desk. Celestia offered him some tea, to which Naruto kindly rebuffed. "I take it Ponyville has been able to recover these past few days." "Indeed, it's been quite exhausting, as I've basically had to play bodyguard for some of the bearers because of their newfound popularity. I thought today was going to be my day off, but alas, it seems like Her Majesty requires my services." Celestia could only smile at Naruto's playful banter. "I am indeed in need of your services, so to speak. I will cut to the chase. It has to deal with my sister Luna, who has plenty of good things to say about you. What I have to ask of you is important to me, and you have the right not to go along with it. If you wish to leave after we talk, I will think nothing less of you." "I'll keep that in mind. How is Princess Luna, by the way?" A solemn look formed on Celestia's face. "That is what I wish to talk with you about. Ever since we left Ponyville, my attempts to get Luna reintegrate into modern society have been less than ideal. I was hoping that my subjects would be more understanding, but many of them fear her, with some of them barely able to contain their own hostility. I knew after the incident it was going to be a long and rough period of adjustment, and I fear for her mental stability if this goes on. Between dealing with the other species pulled into the incident a few days ago, going through the process of reinstating the Diarchy, and dealing with the fallout of the criminals released, and all the property damage, I have not been able to spend as much time with my sister as I wished. This is why I called you here this day. She needs a friend. She needs someone who will be there for her and doesn't see her as Nightmare Moon, someone who will not see her as a tool, and as I mentioned before, she has spoken positively of you. So I ask of you, are you willing to be her friend? I'm surprised you're even asking me that. I already consider Luna my friend. He said as Celestia flashed him a warm smile. I am glad to hear that. I will be sending the missive out to the staff to allow you access throughout the main floor. My sister is located in the southern wing to the castle that was once restricted. After Celestia finished giving the rest of the instructions to where Luna was, the two bid each other farewell. To Naruto's luck, he stumbled upon Princess Luna walking down the same hallway on the way to her bedroom. Savior Naruto, is it thee? The princess spoke up as she walked between the guards with a smile on her face. By the luck of the stars it is. 'Tis a great pleasure for us to see thee again. What brings you to Canterlot? Hey there Princess Luna, I actually just got finished talking with Princess Celestia about some concerns she had. She mentioned you were living in the southern part of the castle, so I thought I'd stop by. And thou wished to visit us? She exclaimed with utter excitement. It was almost impossible to relay how old Princess Luna was supposed to be and to what she looked like now. The excitement that she showed was utterly adorable. Excellent. We shall retire to my quarters and partake of some confections. She turned to the guards and smiled. Aquarius, Leo, head into the kitchens and bring forth something suitable for our guest. We shall take him to bed ourselves. Wait, what? Naruto thought as the two of them were enveloped by a flash of light. The candles allowed the room to be seen with a polished basalt floor and the large canopy bed. The rest of the room was colored with many shades of dark blue, more than Naruto knew existed, and the ceiling itself was a canopy of darkness with white twinkles that reminded him of the night sky. Their furniture consisted of several fancily decorated chairs of an era long past, with the rest of the furniture in a furnishing that had a gothic spin to it. Normally it would be improper for a stallion like yourself to be in our bedchambers, but we care little for the gazes of others and seek privacy with a dear friend. It's no problem, Pinkie began to speak when he was sharply cut off. Luna, she corrected him. At least when we are in private, refer to us as Luna. Very well Luna, how are you doing? He asked as she put on a false smile. We are fine. She answered a little too quickly. Her response was an indication that she was anything but fine. Luna, I know things haven't been easy. Princess Celestia called me here because she was concerned about you. Luna gave out a sigh and hung her head. So you're here by sister's assistance? No, at least not completely by her request did I arrive. Naruto answered her. It's true, Celestia called me here, but she also gave me the option to leave without any persecution. I'm not here out of a request, I'm here because I'm concerned about my friend. So please talk with me and let me know what's troubling you, or maybe tell me something about you, and I can tell you something about me in exchange. Well, Luna began to perk up. Well, we are the guardian of dreams. During the night I would watch over the dreams of our little ponies and consult them through their dreams as well. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, until more of our magic returns, we shan't be able to return to thy duty. Well, I look forward to seeing it in action as myself. So tell me, princess, what do you know about pranking? Hours had passed and the two were enjoying the food the guards had brought as Naruto told her about the pranks he used to pull with Pinkie Pie on some of the inhabitants in town. You and Laughter seem to be quite the troublemakers. If you think that's crazy, I should tell you some stories from my cult days. He replied as Luna let out a quiet yet beautiful laugh. I don't think I heard a laugh that quiet before. He stated as for a brief moment Luna looked concerned. You don't think it's silly? She asked tentatively. If he did, Luna believed she did not want to know. It wouldn't be the first time someone pointed out Luna's laugh. It's not bad, it's really kind of cute. Thank you, she replied. Suddenly their attention was drawn to outside as the sun began to set. The two of them got up and walked to the balcony to where the sun disappeared over the horizon and the moon began to rise. A melancholic smile formed on Luna's face as her once prison began to take its rightful place in the sky. Luna couldn't help but feel rather sad that she was still greatly weakened and couldn't resume her duty of raising the moon and stars. Whenever the night came around when I was young, I would probably spend hours looking at the moon and stars. I didn't have that many friends during my youth, so the stars myself kept me company during those lonely nights. I would make up stories and constellations during that time, and I look back on those memories with fondness. I look forward to see what you'll be able to do once you get more of your magic back. I saw images of the constellations from over a millennia ago when I was looking up information about magical artifacts some time ago. They were amazing and I look forward to seeing more of what you can do. Not only did he compliment Luna, but he also complimented the very thing Luna worked her hardest on. The compliments filled her with a sense of satisfaction and an even deeper sense of gratitude. A great warmth filled her chest. Luna reached over and pulled Naruto into a tight hug. "Thank you." She knew the action was unbecoming of her station, being so familiar with one that wasn't her consort or mate, but she did not care for tradition or matters at the time. She felt the hug returned in Naruto's arms wrapping around her. "You're welcome." The hug lasted just long enough for Luna to stop having the strong urge to cry tears of joy, and she now had a genuinely happy grin on her face. Suddenly an idea came to her mind, one that she decided to approach her sister about. Celestia had mentioned that while she knew plenty of worthy guards that she could find to form the soon-to-be newly reinstated Luna R Guard, there was still the manner of finding a worthy captain. Though, now it looked like that wasn't going to be a problem anymore. Luna found having to adjust to modern-day bedding one of those small annoyances that she would have to get used to in this new era. What happened to a nice fluffy cloud bed that shifted with every subtle movement of its owner? The sound of light knocking caused the Moon Princess to stop her attempts at trying to sleep. "Come in," she called out to it. The door opened quietly, and Celestia stepped through. She had already raised the sun. Luna had felt the surge of her sister's magic, but the White Princess was still dressed in a lilac nightie, which would be considered scandalous of someone of her station. She was also without her golden crown and jewelry. "Morning Luna, I hope my arrival was not at a bad time?" she asked in a soft, benevolent voice. "Nay sister, we are far from tired, merely trying to get a few hours of rest before tonight." There were few moments during the day the sisters could find time to talk between Luna resting and Celestia, with the ever-growing missives that have poured in. Those times were the morning and evenings when day went to night and vice versa. "So, how did you enjoy your evening last night?" Celestia asked as she took a seat on Luna's bed. "Yes. Naruto Uzumaki has proven himself most enjoyable company." "Sister, he is not among your guard, correct? How did thou come to know him?" Celestia couldn't help herself and giggled. "I have to say Naruto is a rather interesting character." Celestia then began informing Luna about how she had come across the blonde in her private library. How he had snuck in and how they formed an odd friendship of sorts. "I am glad to hear that the two of you get along so well. Progress between you and our subject seemed non-existent and I grew concerned, especially since my duty has kept me far more busy than I would like." Luna reached in and wrapped her arms around Celestia, pulling them together. "Sister, we promise that leaving you again is the last thing I'd do to thee again." Luna released Celestia and then began speaking again. "'Tis a shame we do not have more time like this. Tell me about it, the paperwork has been the worst of it." Celestia admitted. "Paperwork sister? Our tax revenue has been pretty consistent, but now a good deal of that has been taken up by repairs and internal improvement bills, not to mention there have been pushes for more healthcare plans and expanding our military budget in light of the incident." Celestia chose her words carefully to avoid putting any extra guilt on her sister. "But what about trade? Surely the bits we get from that would ease the burden of relying on tax revenue for damages." "Unfortunately the incident has caused a lot of problems, domestic and foreign. Every nation has focused on the internal strife and damages that the nationwide breakout of criminals has caused. While there are members of every branch of our government working on keeping the export and imports going, there have been an increase of bandits attacking and pillaging trade shipments, and hiring the necessary protection for certain goods in itself is proving quite expensive. The money we have is being funneled into our imports and relief efforts, with what's left over going into maintenance of the city. And our private accounts. 800 years ago I recreated Equestria's current banking system, as well as financed many of the banks along our borders. I then placed a vast amount of my bits into treasury to finance our nation after a rather costly war with the Griffin Empire a few centuries ago. I would later go on to construct a document detailing an agreement of a siphon that sees me paid out 50 million bits a year under the condition I would not remove money from the treasury for personal use. I had to do something to relieve the fear of our subjects at that time, not to mention I can honestly say I have no idea what to do with all that money anyway. While I do not wholeheartedly agree with every decision the governing bodies I created make, I do trust the Department of Treasury to make the right calls on handling the financial spending and managing that needs to be taken care of. Right now the biggest headache is all the bills and laws being brought to my attention about how to deal with the tainted criminals and those who were, as some of our esteemed members suggested, were coerced. There was a disagreement of sorts that was brewing through many political circles in the major cities. It appeared several of Nightmare Moon's forces had come from some rather prestigious families who were accusing Luna of having brainwashed their family members and making them slaves for her treasonous actions. This was yet another burden, nay distraction, among the piling amount of situations that Celestia found herself having to deal with. Frivolous laws or allowances backed by old money to allow the elites, as they saw themselves, a way to save face. The next few months were going to be rather tiring. With an unimpressed half-lit gaze, Luna dryly commented. We see the nobles remain a headache in the skull. She then decided to bring up the idea to at least reduce one thing off her sister's plate. Speaking of deciding things, Tia, we believe we have solved the issue of captain of our guard. Another tiring day in the town of Ponyville had passed for Naruto. As he drew closer to his home, he picked up the sound of something. Crying. He followed the sound of the crying until he came across a distraught mare sitting on the bench. The mare in question was definitely a unicorn with a white as snow coat. She was also rather tall and with a healthy and attractive body. She was wearing a white long lace trim tank top emphasizing her bust, along with curved skinny jeans. She definitely had to be new to town, as her light pink mane was even lighter in color than Fluttershy's mane. Are you alright, miss? You're not hurt, are you? He asked as he approached the sobbing mare. Upon hearing him, the mare looked up at him, stifling her sobs as she wore the tears from her eyes. Oh hello, I hope I didn't disturb you. I'm not having the best of days. If you need someone to talk to, then I'd be happy to help. He volunteered as he took a seat on the bench. Not like he could just leave her here and ignore her. I don't want to bother you. I'm sure you have better things to do than just comfort some stranger. She replied and sniffled as more tears threatened to fall. Because I'm not the kind of individual who just stand by and ignore others' pain. Let's just say I understand how much it means to have someone to lean on when you're feeling down. I see. The mare responded as she took a sigh before explaining her situation. I decided to come to Ponyville to surprise my cold friend and caught him in bed with another mare. The thing is, we were having issues with our relationship seeing as it was long distance and he wanted to start a herd, but I wasn't sold on the idea seeing as I wouldn't even be around to do my duty most of the time. I know we were having issues with him pushing me into things I weren't ready, but I didn't think he'd go that far, you know. Herd. Naruto pondered for a second. If he was remembering correctly, that was the term of the Ninja Troyes. Was that what the term was called? What about friends and family members? My family is all the way in Canterlot and I'm new to town. I also won't be able to withdraw any bits from the bank with it being closed, so I won't be able to afford a hotel. She said as she shivered and rubbed her arms. Tonight, while nowhere near as cold as your usual winter seasons, it still seemed rather chilly. If you wish, you can come back to my place. It's not much, but it's better than staying out here in the cold. Really? She asked, wiping away the last of her tears as she settled her hands in her laps. I wouldn't want to impose. It's fine, as a good friend of mine always says, I'm too much of a gentleman to leave a lady in need. Quickly compassing herself, she stood up and turned back to the blonde. Thank you so much. I don't know how I could ever repay you. It's fine, I'm Naruto, by the way. So what's your name, miss? He introduced himself as the mare gave him a warm smile and introduced herself in return. Twinkle, you have my thanks, Naruto. Naruto smiled in return and began leading her back to his place. He unlocked the door and invited her in. Come in and make yourself at home. Can I offer you anything? Tea or coffee maybe? He asked as he led her into the living room. Twinkle took a seat on the couch as she gazed around. Some coffee with a lump of sugar if you don't mind. She answered him as she continued to look around the room. She took notice of some of the scrolls and a bottle of inks on the table. Alright, a cup of coffee for the mare coming right up. Naruto traveled into the kitchen and opened the cupboard. Taking down 2 cups, he set them down on the cabinet and filled his tea kettle with some water. Turning the fire up, he began to boil the water. Soon as the water was ready, he poured it in the cup along with some instant coffee mix and put in the sugar. He soon returned to the living room and saw that Twinkle was standing by the table, looking over his scrolls with interest. Setting down the saucers containing the cups on the table, he walked over. Have an interest in scrolls? The mare jumped lightly and let out a slight yelp. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be nosy. No, it's fine, and the coffee is ready, by the way. The two of them returned to the couch where Twinkle carefully lifted the cup with her hooves and took a small sip. I don't believe I've had this brand of coffee before. It's local made. I rarely drink coffee myself, but I keep some for days where I feel like I want to sleep in, but really can't. I hope you don't find me prying, but what do you do? I don't have a set career, I'm actually the assistant to the local boutique owner, but I do a lot of odd jobs around town. Helping the local farmers on their land or gathering herbs from the forest. I saved up enough money for this house, but now I'm trying to decide on what career I should take. So tell me, Twinkle, did you have a career? Yes, I was doing some work for the government in Canterlot before I arrived in town. I was doing your typical job of paperwork and some meetings here or there, nothing really interesting. Well, we can always talk about something else then. Why not tell me a bit more about yourself? Hours ticked away as Naruto continued to chat with the mare. The two of them traded backstories back and forth as they discussed various topics and such. Even laughter found its way through the home as Naruto regaled in some of his childhood pranks. It took Naruto taking notice of his clock on the wall for the blonde to realize they had spent almost all night talking. The sun will be rising in a few hours, and I have to get some rest. I'm sorry if I come off as rude, but I have to get up early tomorrow and aid a friend of mine with a project her teacher gave her. Thank you for your company, Naruto. The pleasant smile left her face as she paused as if she was afraid of how the blonde was going to react upon the next thing she was going to say. The fact her eyes would meet his and then dart away and she would fidget along with the grasping of her hands gave away her nervousness. I know I don't have any right to ask you of this. She started and inwardly chastised herself. That sounded absolutely horrible. I mean she began to stammer when the blonde gave her a warm smile. You can stay as long as you need to. He answered, seemingly picking up on her problem. It's only for a few days, at least until my paycheck is deposited into my account. I'll be able to afford a train ticket then and get back home. Of course, until then make yourself at home. He said as he got up from his seat. I'm going to get some blankets and pillows and show you to the bedroom. I'm way too tired to argue with any pony tonight, so please just take my room. I just wanted to crash as soon as possible and sleep. Between each of his sentences Naruto let out a deep yawn as his eyes began to cloud with moisture. Twinkleshine would have responded that she couldn't do such a thing, but seeing that the blonde was about to collapse, accepted his kind offer without much argument, if only to ease the burden of the kind stallion. Saying their good nights the two parted ways as they went to prepare for bed. Naruto woke up early the next day and made breakfast. After consuming some pancakes and eggs, Naruto left a note for Twinkleshine to find while he went on about his business. Golden Oaks Library was a place Naruto visited often when he first moved into Ponyville. Hours upon hours of time were spent reading and rereading, using a combination of Kagabunchen and Henge to quickly absorb all the information he could get. He walked into the library to which Twilight, who was sitting behind the desk, greeted him. Good morning, Naruto. She greeted him with a bright and cheery smile. A few days had passed since the housewarming party that was had for Twilight and Spike. As always, Rarity was dressed to impress. Morning, Twilight, he greeted her. So you ready for this assignment? From the time he had spent with Twilight so far, she was definitely the dutiful student. She really enjoyed reading and research, a trait that from time to time had him reminiscence about his old teammate. I definitely am, I'm so excited. I've already talked with the others and set up a strict schedule for us to begin the interviews. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Interviews? Princess Celestia wanted me to give you this letter. She said as she brought out that she had neatly tucked away in her bag and levitated it over the blonde. Naruto's eyes skimmed over the letter, and the more he read the more incredulous he got. What? He audibly exclaimed, not believing what he was reading. Did Celestia really expect him to ask his friends these questions? Twilight, what did Princess Celestia detail that we should ask the other bearers? She wanted their name, physical traits, and background. She insisted on getting a complete biography so she could reward them for their services to Equestria, along with getting to know them better. Twilight may have accepted the explanation at face value, but as Naruto's eyes skimmed over some of these questions, there was no way in hell that the questions on this eyes had anything to do with that. Naruto now came to realize the folly of pranking an immortal princess with several thousand years of living experience. Why did he underestimate how cunning she would be? She even cashed in that little chip they agreed on, meaning that he had to take part or admit defeat. Well, if Celestia wanted to battle, then a battle she shall have. Since he arrived 15 minutes early, he and Twilight chatted for a bit until Rarity was scheduled to arrive. A knock on the door drew them out of their reverie. Before Twilight could even get up, Spike had raced and beat her to the door with eager bluster. Opening the door stood none other than Rarity. As always, she dressed to impress with one of her usual numbers, but violet in color. Today she was wearing earrings and a diamond necklace along a pair of heels. Why, hello, Spike. How are you this morning? Wonderful, he said in a bit of a daze. You look wonderful, by the way. Ow, she cooed as she rubbed the top of his head affectionately. You're just so sweet. I bet you say that to all the fillies. With that she walked forward as Spike continued to be in a love-struck daze. Morning, Twilight. Naruto. Naruto nodded and smiled. Rare. Morning, Rarity, I'm glad you could make it. Can I offer you anything? Muffins? Tea? Twilight asked as she levitated a tray of goods from the kitchen. Just a cup of tea if you don't mind, darling. Rarity said as she looked for a chair to sit in, only for Spike to drag up a chair, quickly dusted off, and placed a pillow for her to sit on. Why, if you keep being this helpful, I might have to convince Twilight to let me borrow you from time to time. Oh, I see how it is, Rarity. I move out and now you're ready to replace me? He teased her with a sad pout. Seeing through the mock hurt, she merely grinned. No one can ever replace you, darling. So shall we begin this interview? This is so exciting. While the two mares were excited for the interview, Naruto couldn't help but inwardly groan. He could only hope that Rarity would only maim him slightly when it came his turn to ask the questions about her body. The two of them made sure to go over with Rarity that this detailed interview was to not only answer questions Celestia would have about the bearers, but to make sure she had a detailed file on them for a matter of reasons. One would be as a quick reference in case of a domestic issue that might result from anything ranging from kidnapping to blackmail. Knowing their past and combing through it to make sure there is nothing that could be used against them. The other was that Celestia insisted on rewarding them. Her generosity, which was one of Celestia's most known traits besides her kindness, was known by many, which in hindsight upon the return of the elements of harmony made sense. Celestia wasn't kind and generous because she was secretly some evil dictator controlling everything, or because she was being manipulative. Those were just genuine traits to her character. The accusations all in all didn't make sense because if Celestia was truly cruel, she wouldn't be able to use the elements of harmony in the first place. Well, we know of your name Rarity, so we will go on to the next question. Do you have any nicknames or aliases you go by? Say for purposes like business deals or such. Twilight began as Naruto glanced down at his paper and let out a soft sigh. Well, from time to time I have been given the moniker Rare by those close to me. I have also used the name Radiance during my short stint as a model. Of course I had to stop modeling because not only did it take away my focus from my career, I was not willing to mutilate my body for the styles they had coming out. I am rather happy with my shape, thank you very much. Naruto heard this story from Rarity once when they were simply talking during one of their gemstone hunts. Apparently Rarity's hips were too big for some of the dressed and they wanted someone with a more upside down triangle shape. Alright, now on to the next question. How old are you? As soon as the question left Twilight's lips, Rarity had paused, looking rather affronted at the question. For a mare like Twilight, she didn't care for such things about guarding her age. She thought the whole idea was kind of silly. Naruto covered his mouth with his palm to hide the silent laughter. He could practically imagine her speaking. My age. My word, that certainly is not an aspirate question that a lady should be asked. 23, Rarity answered in practically a hushed whisper. Rare, you have decades before even having to worry about entering your aged years. He replied as Rarity shot him a look. Talking about another pony's age isn't particularly polite. She answered as Naruto shook his head. All the while Twilight nodded and continued to simply jot down whatever information she was given. For tribe she simply jot down information because that was easy to glean along with fur, eye, and mane color. With her careful observation she quickly answered the questions that were unnecessary to ask. So Rarity, how tall are you? Rarity happily answered this one if only to get away from the age question. 5'9", she answered proudly. Okay, so how much do you weigh? As soon as the question left Twilight's lips, Rarity's teacup slipped from her grip and clattered on the saucer, spilling some of the tea on it. Is such a question really needs to be asked? This time Rarity couldn't hide her displeasure. It's on the list of question Princess Celestia sent me to ask. If you're not aware of it offhand, you can always go find out and we can answer it later. No, I will answer the question now, might as well get it out of the way. She shot a hesitant glance at Naruto. As if he read her mind, Naruto picked up why Rarity was hesitant. I'll be right back. He said as he got up and made his way to where the restroom was. He waited a few minutes and returned just as Rarity finished going over her occupations. Now, do you have any scars, illnesses, or allergies? Rarity took a moment to think, taking a sip of her tea as she did. My body is free of any scars and I am not inflicted with any illnesses, thank goodness. As for allergies, I have seasonal reactions to certain plants with pollen, but other than that, no allergies that I know of. All these questions were more than just a biography. Those questions could be used as a checklist to spot out imposters. What about accessories and jewelries? Now this was a question Rarity could answer. She prattled on for practically 15 minutes as she trailed off topic as she went into a discussion about necklaces and earrings for various purposes and such. It took Naruto interrupting her in order to get them back on track. They skipped the relative questions because Naruto knew of Rarity's family fairly well. After going over Rarity's ability, it came to the moment Naruto dreaded. Now it was time for him to question her. Please keep in mind these are not my questions and were sent to me. I'm only asking this at Her Majesty's behest. What is your bust size? He asked as Rarity's mouth dropped and Twilight head jumped up from the pad she was jotting information down in surprise. Excuse me? She cried out in righteous indignation. I do believe I misheard you. Are you sure you're reading that right? Twilight asked as she was in utter disbelief that Princess Celestia would ask that sort of question. Yes, Twilight, I can read, he sarcastically snapped at her, causing her to reel back and her ears to droop. Naruto inwardly cursed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get mad at you, Twilight, it's just, well, I don't know. I mean, Princess Celestia has her reasons, right? He reasoned to them while inwardly thinking, damn trolling princess. He quickly came up with a reason. Maybe she wants to have a thank you outfit made and she's making sure she's getting the measurements right. It was such bullshit reasoning. He knew it and he suspected Twilight wasn't sold on it. Rarity on the other hand did a 180, no longer sending a hated gaze at Naruto, and stared off into space as the look of daydreaming entered her eyes. It was obvious she was imagining a lavish spectacle of an outfit given to her by Celestia herself. So about the question. "Oh, well, I'm a triple D, size 42. She answered. "Actually I didn't finish the question. I need more than your bust size, I need your entire measurements." He said as Rarity hesitated but finished the question. She gave her waist as 26 and her hips as 42. For a moment Naruto had to remind himself that the beings here weren't human, so what was considered reasonable by those standards weren't going to be the same here. Naruto blushed a bit, for the first time in a long time he was thinking about Rarity's figures and looks overall, and sure enough she was highly attracted. Sure one or twice he had noticed it, but he never really looked at her in that sort of a way, considering her a dear friend. "Let's just go ahead and go on to your combat abilities." Naruto quickly changed up the subject. Finally it was going on near 11 when they finally finished. "Is there anything else you wish to know?" Twilight finished writing down what she needed to before smiling. "Well, then. That's all. Thank you for the time. Naruto and I have to plan for the next interview. I assume this time next month will be good for an update interview. I will have to see what my schedule will hold for that week. I must admit this was a rather interesting interview and I will be seeing the two of you later. See you later Rarity." "Later Rare." With their goodbyes exchanged now it was time for the next bearer to show up for their interview. Naruto was intently working on the private portion of the biographies while Spike and Twilight were upstairs. There were certain incidents in their past that some of the bearers weren't comfortable speaking about, but Naruto knew because he knew them longer. So the latter decided to take Spike upstairs and put the time to practical use while Naruto worked on the bios. Naruto bid farewell to Pinkie Pie as she left, returning back to the table to finish the biography. Glancing over it Naruto was satisfied that everything was in working order. "Twilight, I'm done." Naruto called upstairs. A moment later Twilight and Spike were walking down the stairs. "So did you get what you needed?" Twilight asked as Naruto then glanced at Spike noticing his mustache before turning back to Twilight. He shook his head deciding that he wasn't even going to ask. "So cool statch right?" Spike asked Naruto as he was proudly stroking the edges between his clawed fingers. "Say enough to impress a lady." Naruto fought back his urge to laugh. "I do have to admit that is a pretty nice mustache. To be fair it really was. Though the men in my family are more partial to beards, especially my ancestral grandfather, I wish I had a picture to show you, but I only heard legends about it. No Kage's hair was ever as epic as the Uzukage of course. Why don't we go into town? It's around lunchtime, my treat." "Sure that'll be nice." Twilight answered as the three of them strolled towards the front door, grabbing her key out of her bag as they walked out of the door. Twilight locked the door behind them as they entered the busy Ponyville streets. The three of them were walking down Ponyville's busy streets. As they made their journey they ran into a few other ponies. "Hey there Turner." Naruto called out to an earth pony stallion. The stallion was 5'10" with a rather slim build for an earth pony. As always Time Turner dressed in nice clothing, a charcoal black single-breasted one-buttons, slim-fit suit with shawl lapel, center vent, flat front pants that were textured solid. Considering his dark amber mane and tail along with grayish amber coat and pale light gray cobalt eyes, it gave him a devilish handsome look. "Naruto, Miss Sparkle, Mr. Spike," he greeted them absent-mindedly as he continued to gaze at the clock in his hand. "Just meant 70:20. He seemed to murmur. Naruto shook his head as he was used to the eccentric nature of the stallion. As they continued their trek Spike once more praised Twilight for her amazing ability to pick up spells. Naruto himself had to admit 25 spells in a single day was rather impressive. It was pretty much commonly accepted that beyond telekinesis most unicorns be able to learn spells not connected to their special talent was rather difficult. It had almost become a common belief that it was nearly impossible to do so, seeing as it was rare for unicorns to be trained in advanced spells or battle magic outside of becoming a scholar or joining the military. Because one's innate magic was closely connected to their talent, there was only a small turnout of unicorns joining Equestria's elite magical circles. "Anyway," a voice came. Naruto noted whoever spoke didn't seem to be bright as the three turned to see two young unicorn colts in full gallop. The shorter and chubbier of the two was buck-toothed, had a light blue-green coat, messy yellow-brown mane, and a pair of scissors on his hand. He was wearing a simple green shirt that hovered over his chubby stomach, shorts, and tennis. The other, taller and thinner, had a yellow-tan coat, bird-catcher spots near his eyes, and equally unkempt light green mane that are slightly longer than his counterpart. He was also wearing jean shorts, a black t-shirt under suspenders with a cutie mark of a snail on his hand. Both of them had beady black eyes, and the shorter of the two sported thick brown eyebrows as well. They both looked to be around the cutie mark Crusader's age. Humming through. The taller colt added as they barreled past with enough speed to blow the mare and stallion hair sideways, while Spike found himself being bulldozed along on the shorter colt's head. Snips. Snails. What's going on? Spike asked them. They answered by skidding to a stop, throwing him clear. What, haven't you heard? The taller colt, Snails, said as Spike crashed somewhere. There is a new unicorn in town. Yeah. Agreed the shorter colt, Snips, as he bounced on his hooves as if he was high with sugar. They say that she's got more magical powers than any other unicorn ever. As Snip spoke, Twilight and Naruto approached the two colts as Spike did the same as he rubbed his head. Don't you two think you're being a bit enthusiastic? You two obviously heard wrong, Spike scoffed. That honor goes to Twilight here. As he raised an arm to her, she smiled and blushed at the praise. Naruto couldn't help but silently agreed. If not now then Twilight was definitely going to have to earn that honor. Where is this unicorn? Oh, she's in the town square. Snails answered. Come on. He then galloped off. Yeah. Come on. Snips agreed as he followed with an excited yell as Twilight, Naruto, and Spike raced after him a moment later. In front of the town square pavilion there was a wagon trailer set up front, presenting its side to the sizable crowd gathered before it. Naruto could hear a female voice ringing out over the scene, sounding very dramatic and over the top, as he, Twilight, Spike made their way to the front. Twilight's friends were at the front of the crowd. Come one, come all. The voice dramatically announced, building up anticipation and drawing attention. Come and witness the amazing magic of the great and powerful Trixie. During this line, the trailer reconfigured itself. 1. The side wall flipped down to become a stage backed by a dark blue curtain, and 2 wings folded out to extend its length. 2. The end swung out, exposing 3 brass horns mounted on each. 3. The roof popped up and several bits of overhead scenery extended over the stage. Rocket, planet and stars, spiral, stars, and magic wand. Then, a blast of glittering blue smoke went off on the stage. Naruto's eyes widened and a deep blush covered his cheeks when the performer showed herself. She was a unicorn, an attractive one around Rarity's height with a stylized cornflower blue body mane, with both ends going opposite lengths, but curling upward slightly like the end of a tail. Her horn was about the size of an average unicorn horn, sharing the same coloring as her brilliant azure coat. Her outfit consisted of lavender boots with a design of stars on them, as well as a lavender magician's cape and hat decorated with star symbols. She wore a white corset top under an open lavender mini jacket, as well as a dark lilac miniskirt that stopped just below her knees, with the cerulean blue straps of a thong hanging on her hips. As such, her cutie mark, a star-tipped wand spreading stardust, was revealed. Trixie has just made her grand arrival, prompting awed murmurs from the crowd. Watch in awe as the great and powerful Trixie performs the most spectacular feats of magic ever witnessed by pony eyes. She boasted as fireworks erupted from the stage, but Rarity seemed to be far from impressed. My, Rarity remarked. What boasting? Come on. Spike began as he craned his head and once more began to rant. No ponies as magical as Twi. He then nearly had a fit upon realizing that he was speaking to the mare he wanted to impress with his mustache earlier. Twi-oh. He then blushed a bit as he cleared his throat. Hey, Rarity, a mustache. He then ran off in a panic as his 2 companions took his place. There's nothing wrong with being talented, is there? Twilight hesitantly asked the blonde. Seeing the expression on some of the ponies she was starting to feel a bit worried. Nothing at all, Applejack assured her, joining the group as she eyed Trixie, who conjured up a bouquet of flowers. Septin when someone goes around showing it off like a school filly with fancy new ribbons. Just because one has the ability to perform lots of magic does not make one better than the rest of us. Rarity added. Naruto was a bit surprised at his friend's reactions. Sure, he could understand why some ponies didn't like others boasting about them being better than them, but the mare was an obvious performer and they sometimes tended to brag. Twilight hunched down and let her ears droop sheepishly. The words of her friends didn't do anything to ease her anxiety. Considering she wasn't close enough yet to have intimate knowledge on her friends, she was concerned with how strong their bond was. Rainbow Dash chose that moment to speak up. Especially when you got me around being better than the rest of us. She said with a chuckle, then stopped herself as Applejack leered daggers at her. Magic, schmagic. Boo. She gave a sidelong glance at the still disapproving Farmpany. Naruto shook his head. Rain, we all know you're the town's foremost boaster. He playfully took a shot at his friend. Besides, are you really going to? He began trying to smooth things over when Trixie's voice echoed over the area. Well. She announced, using a spell to project the volume of her voice. It seems we have some naysayers in the audience. Her eyes roamed the crowd and she stuck up her nose. Who is so ignorant as to challenge the magical ability of the great and powerful Trixie? There were assorted reactions of disgust, annoyance, confusion, and awe from every pony, the last of which came only from Snips and Snails. Most of the town being comprised of earth ponies have either dealt with, heard, or were taught by their family the prejudices between the tribes their ancestors dealt with. Just as stallions were treated as second-class citizens for breeding as quite some time, earth ponies were treated as slaves by several clans for many centuries across the continent. This practice was used more by unicorns by a sizable margin than Pegasi, with a small percentage of slave owners being other earth ponies themselves. These were just some of the many practices abolished when the nation of Equestria fell under the rule of the royal pony sisters. It was this type of behavior that always stirred up bad blood and encouraged the tribalist mindset. While tribalist behavior was almost unheard of in a town like Ponyville, being a town that always had members of the three tribes from its early history despite being founded by earth ponies, it was impossible to say that there haven't been those who have traveled and settled to the small town and carried those beliefs with them. Do they not know that they're in the presence of the most magical unicorn in all of Equestria? At this point her bragging was crossing into outright arrogant territory, but despite how annoying it was, this Trixie wasn't breaking the law. While a lot of ponies didn't appreciate that trait, one couldn't punish some pony for bragging. Then again, a good deal of the nation was still unaware of the specifics of the Nightmare Moon incident. She wouldn't be boasted if she knew the element of magic was in this very town. Rarity of all ponies gave a raspberry. Just who does she think she is? Spike then elbowed up between her and Twilight. Yeah. Spike agreed, since we all know that Twilight here is Spike, SHHH. The purple unicorn then pushed him well away from the spectacle for a private chat, and both kept their voices down. What's wrong? You see the way they reacted to Trixie? I don't want anyone thinking I'm a show-off. Once again, the performers' fireworks went off, more energetically than before. All of a sudden, Rainbow Dash then flew into the stage, fed up by Trixie's stunts. So, great and powerful Trixie, what makes you think you're so awesome, anyway? Rainbow Dash sarcastically asked her. Trixie answered by putting a hoof to her face with a disdainful laugh, then spoke with mounting fervor. Why, only the great and powerful Trixie has magic strong enough to vanquish the dreaded Ursa Major. Fireworks blasted from the horns at one end of the stage, decorating the sky with the outline of a huge bear whose forehead is marked with a starburst. There were gasps and murmurs all around. What? Snips gasped. No way. Snails gasped. When all hope was lost, the ponies of Hoofington had no one to turn to. Trixie continued her story as a figure of herself, then approached the Ursa, wand at the ready. As she continues, it stood pat before the beast swipes and cast a spell, causing it to fizzle out and disappear in a shower of sparks. But the great and powerful Trixie stepped in and with her awesome magic, vanquished the Ursa Major and sent it back to its cave, deep within the Everfree forest. An Ursa Major? That was clearly a lie. Nothing short of an entire unit of the guard or one of Equestria's Arcana mages could hope to take on an Ursa Major and come away unscathed. Their massive size and strength classified them among the highest class of species-based threat. "Sweet," cried out the two colts. "That settles it," added Snips. As the magician stood proudly, Snails walked closer to the stage and gestured to her as he spoke. "Trixie truly is the most talented, most magical, most awesome unicorn in Ponyville," he said. Snip popped up next to him. "No. In all of Equestria." At that time, Twilight and Spike had returned to the crowd. "How do you know?" Spike objected. "You didn't see it. And besides, he was cut off as his mouth was literally zipped shut by the unicorn he was about to mention. "They're just children, Spike," Naruto informed him as he tried to appease the dragon. "They don't know any better." Trixie gave out a laugh. "It's true, my enthusiastic little admirers. Trixie is most certainly the best in Ponyville. Don't believe the great and powerful Trixie? Well, then, I hereby challenge you Ponyvillians. Anything you can do, I can do better. Any takers? Anyone? There was no answer from any pony. Or is Trixie destined to be the greatest equine who has ever lived? Once more came another fusillade of fireworks, the most elaborate so far, after which Spike unzipped his lip and threw himself at Twilight's hooves, sobbing. "Please. She's unbearable. You gotta show her. You just gotta." "There's no way I'm gonna use my magic now, Spike," she was answered. "Especially since." She was cut off by Trixie as she scanned the crowd. How about you?" She then pointed at Twilight, who swallowed hard. After pointing at the purple unicorn, Trixie strode confidently toward the edge of the stage. "Well, how about it, Is there anything you can do that the great and powerful Trixie can't?" she dared. Twilight began to stammer. Before an answer could be given, Applejack spoke up. "That's it. I can't stand for no more of this. You show her, AJ." Spike called out as the farm pony walked up on stage. "Can your magical powers do this?" Applejack began her performance. She twirled a lasso around herself at floor level with her tail. She hoisted the loop clear of the boards and then worked it forward and backward. There was a chorus of oohs from the crowd. An expert flick of the blonde tail then sent the lasso flying to snag an apple off a tree. The rope loosened on the return trip so that the fruit landed squarely in her mouth. After a quick chew and swallow, the crowd voiced its approval. Applejack then turned to face Trixie. "Top that, missy." In response, the magician's hat began to glow in the same color as Trixie's eyes. "Oh, ye of little talent." Her hat was then lifted clear of her head, fully exposing her horn and mane, the latter of which curled slightly. Watch and be amazed at the magic of Trixie. One end of the now untied rope began to glow in the same aura as it sinuously off the stage, just like how snake charmers do it. It swayed back and forth before Applejack's face, catching her attention as the other end of the rope pulled a second apple from the tree. The first end then lashed toward Applejack's hooves and hog-tied her, briefly lifting her upside down off the stage before dropping her on her back. Then, once she fell on the stage floor, the apple was stuffed whole into her mouth. The crowd laughed and cheered as the farm pony hopped away. Naruto rushed over to the farmer and began undoing the ropes. "AJ, you okay?" "Yeah, just my pride is bruised." "Why did you go and challenge her?" "Well, someone had to shut her up." "I don't like her attitude either, but what good would it do to drag yourself down to her level? After a day or two she'll be on her way." Naruto reasoned. He was downright annoyed, but he didn't want to cause an incident. This performer wasn't worth it. Naruto clutched his fist as he found himself growing steadily angrier, but kept his cool. He couldn't believe some of the members of the town were actually cheering. "Once again, the great and powerful Trixie prevails," the unicorn declared. Just then, Rainbow Dash flew right up to Trixie's face. "There's no need to go strutting around and showing off like that." "Oh? That's my job." Rainbow then went off into a speeding charge and set a windmill spinning at an insanely high speed as she grabbed one vein. The machine then pitched her skyward when she let go, punching meat holes through a long row of clouds. The self-assured aviator hovered briefly before the sun so that it silhouetted her form. Her next move was a screaming dive that carried her through the hole she punched and down to the same windmill, a few droplets of moisture following her from the clouds. When she repeated the grab-release maneuver, the veins flung her straight back to the stage, where she skidded to a stop and let the trailing droplets scatter off her back, resulting in a small rainbow forming over her head. "They don't call me Rainbow and Dash for nothing." Once again, the crowd cheered from the display, while Trixie seemed unperturbed. When Trixie is through, the only thing they'll call you is loser. Her horn then glowed as she shot a beam at the rainbow, making it wrap its creator up in a little tornado and carry her yelling into the sky. The cyclone veered madly in all directions before hitting the ground upside down and flying away. Rainbow wound up lying on her face in the dirt, her eyes jittering and her body bent upward, as if sprawled against an invisible wall. "I think I'm gonna be sick." Seems like any pony with a dash of good sense would think twice before tussling with the great Trixie. On the end of this, she cast another spell as Rainbow got upright and fumbled her way to the crowd. A black cloud appeared overhead and zapped the Pegasus in the plot with a lightning bolt. There was laughter from more of the crowd. He knew Rainbow Dash could be tough to deal with at times and rather abrasive, but how could some of these ponies turn their back on her? Same with Applejack. The bearers were heroes, the bearers were the reason that they could even stand around and watch this travesty of a show. That was far from better, she was now being vindictive. "What we need is another unicorn to challenge her," Spike said as he elbowed Twilight's side. "Someone with some magic of their own." "Yeah." Rainbow agreed as she moved towards Chronicle. "A unicorn to show this unicorn who's boss." "A real unicorn to unicorn tussle," Applejack added as Spike eyed Twilight expectantly. The purple unicorn uttered, still terrified at the prospect of coming off as a show-off. Rarity then stepped up. "Enough. Enough, all of you. I take your hint, but Rarity is above such nonsense. Rainbow Dash and Applejack may behave like ruffians, but I conduct myself with beauty and grace." "Ooh, what's the matter?" Trixie taunted. "Afraid you'll get a hair out of place in that rat's nest you call a mane?" "Ah hell," Naruto thought as he knew what was going to happen next. Naruto inwardly cursed at the fact that he made friends with ponies as stubborn as him. "Oh, it is on." Naruto moved between the stage and the mare. "Naruto. What are you doing? Out of my way so I can show that mare some proper manners." "Rarity, don't do this. You saw what she did to Applejack and Rainbow Dash. Trust me, you have to walk away." Rarity, while still steaming, could not adhere to Naruto's request. "I will not allow this braggart to harm our friends. Have faith in me." Naruto wanted to argue, but he couldn't come up with any other reason. Rarity was too stubborn to convince, and nothing short of him physically forcing her would change her mind. It wasn't like this was life-threatening or anything, but merely a pissing contest over a matter of pride. Now on stage encircling Trixie, the aspiring designer regained the bulk of her composure. You may think you're tough with all of your so-called powers, but there is more to magic than your brutish ways. A unicorn needs to be more than just muscle. Her horn proceeded to glow as she pulled off the curtain. A unicorn needs to have style. The curtain then wrapped itself into a tight whirl around her body, and a flash clears it away to show the results. She now wore a blue gown trimmed in gold, which now rested over her previous outfit, and her mane has been styled into a tall bouffant. Over the crowd's ooze, she continued, a unicorn is not a unicorn without grace and beauty. Trixie just smirked and readied herself for another spell. Rarity won't let Trixie get the best of her. Spike said in a love-struck manner. She's strong, she's beautiful. There came a flash and his eyes widened in disbelief. His jaw then dropped, the crowd mirroring his sentiments in face and voice. Quick. Rarity panicked. I need a mirror. Get me a mirror. What did she do to my mane? I know she did something terrible to my mane. Twilight was trying not to laugh as she answered, nothing. Rainbow Dash was doing the same. It's fine. Applejack was feeling unsettled. It's gorgeous. I hardly notice a thing. Naruto quickly lied as his face tightened. He knew how emotional Rarity could get over such things. Spike was stunned. It's green. Instantly, the others glared at him. What? Rarity's mane was indeed green, and in 2 different shades at that. It was also a piled-up mess, with a twig and a few berries caught in it, as well as a couple of tails protruding from the uppermost reaches. No. Green hair. Not green hair. Rarity lamented as she dashed through the crowd, shuddering. Such an awful, awful color. As she sobbed and galloped away, she bypassed Golden Harvest, who decided to try a new mane style by dyeing her hair green. Well, I never. She cried out in offense. Between seeing Rarity run off crying and the laughter of the crowd caused Naruto to snap. Enough. He roared, unable to keep his composure and unintentionally letting out what most ponies liken to bloodlust. So, you all think this is funny, do you? He snapped as he settled on the members of the crowd being sucked in by the incident. You all have some nerve. They risk their lives in the Everfree to help save this town. Heroes many of you have known for years and grew up alongside, and this is how you repay them. You laugh at their embarrassment. And here I thought we were a town of love and tolerance who always supported our own. What a joke. Every pony was shocked at Naruto's change in demeanor. A good deal of them had known the blonde for months and knew him as a loyal and supportive pony who was always willing to help any pony. Upon reflecting on the stallion's words, many of them wore looks of shame upon realizing that he was right. He then turned his heated gaze on Trixie. And you being boastful and arrogant, I can put up with that to a point, but I will not let you bully my friends any longer. Going as far as inflicting physical pain against ponies for the sake of your ego. You're nothing but a great and powerful coward. The crowd went perfectly silent. Recovering from her shock, Trixie matched Naruto's glare. Is that so? Care to challenge me and put your bits where your mouth is? Yeah, I do. Naruto's back was to the crowd, leaving only Trixie able to see the sharp expression on the stallion's face. For a moment she thought her mind was playing tricks on her. Confirming that the blonde's eyes were cerulean and not crimson, she discreetly swallowed and put on her confident sneer. What are your terms? Trixie is confident she can defeat you in anything. Then I challenge you to an honor duel. Hushed whispers started to break out as a result of this. An honor duel was similar in concept to a trial by combat without a loss of life. Both parties would wager something of value to those involved. Like a trial by combat, the terms had to be set beforehand, and one can even elect a champion in their place. Tomorrow afternoon we go to the entrance of the Everfree Forest. The first one to head in and return back with fresh Ursa major fur, seeing as there is an Ursa den inside the forest. For a brief moment Trixie's haughty experience was broken. An Ursa den? Was this pony insane? Either way, the stubborn mare could not allow this pony to show her up and damage her pride. Very well. Those who want to see the winner can wait at the outskirts by Fluttershy's cottage. Naruto was pretty sure the mare would have been thoughtless and tried to invite members of the town along to watch her greatness, and he decided to nip it in the bud. If I win, you apologize to my friends. And if Trixie wins, well, she gave the blonde a glance over. Well, she could always use a servant to pull her cart. The gathering of ponies muttered to each other as the main 6 and Spike glanced worriedly at one another. I'll be waiting, Trixie, Naruto intoned as he began leaving the area. Trixie stared at the spot where the stallion coughing haughtily. Well, it seems my afternoon performance has been cancelled. But don't worry, tomorrow's performance will be twice as grand. 000000000000000. Twilight and Spike eventually returned to the library to see Naruto right back where he had been earlier that morning, wrapping up the scrolls and finished them for preparation. The scrolls for Rarity, Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash are ready. He looked up to see Twilight's worried expression. You weren't serious about the challenge, were you? You can't be thinking of going after an Ursa major. Twilight's right man, even I think that's crazy. I am serious you too. She attacked ponies I cared about, ponies I considered my family. He slammed his fist into the desk causing her and Spike to wince. All I can think about is how I stood by while 3 of my friends were humiliated. If someone doesn't stand up to Trixie she's just going to keep doing this to others and someday someone might get hurt. That's insane. I know you're doing this for the honor of our friends, but an Ursa major. You will be killed if you go through this foolish challenge. Ponies like Trixie only understand things once you break through their pride. The only other way to break her pride is for her to be shown up. You're the element of magic Twilight, there's no way a mere showmare has half your talent. Spike grinned as he realized Naruto wanted her to confront Trixie too. He may not have been able to convince Twilight, but Naruto seemed good at these sorts of things. I already told Spike, no. Twilight responded. You saw how the others reacted. Twilight, what you would be doing and what Trixie are doing is 2 different things. If you were to open your eyes you would see that. He didn't mean to snap at the mare, he wasn't angry at her, but he was sad that Twilight was still fearful that the others were going to betray her after what they'd been through. He was beginning to think that this was a deep-seated issue from her past. I'm not doing it, and that's final. Okay. He softly answered. You don't want to do this so I won't bring it up again, but I have to do this. It's too dangerous. Twilight was cut off when she was suddenly pulled into a hug. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be your friend and I haven't even taken the time to try and learn anything about you. You not wanting to show off, there's a deeper issue there isn't it? You've been hurt before haven't you Twi? Naruto looked up at Spike and seeing the crestfallen look in his eyes, confirmed Naruto's suspicions. I'm going to come back Twilight and I'm going to start being a better friend. He pulled back and noticed she was crying. Spike, can you make some tea? From what he noticed a few things he visited the library Spike seemed to be the one who did all the cooking. Yes sure. He said as he left the stallion to comfort. He let out a forlorn sigh as he entered the kitchen, feeling rather useless. He didn't want to think about that moment all those years ago. How sad Twilight was when those ponies betrayed her trust and broke Twilight's faith in having friends. Naruto held Twilight and let herself cry herself to sleep. Later that afternoon he came down and took a seat opposite of Spike. I know there are things Twilight have to tell me herself right? He asked as the dragon nodded. What can you tell me? It broke her heart. He answered as a look of pain flashed across his face. All I can tell you that a lot of ponies tried to use Twilight because of her status. Some of them either couldn't remember her name or didn't care. Calling her the sun's favored fool was far more convenient. Twilight, well, you see how she is you know. She's not a bad pony because she favors literature and scholarly pursuits over social climbing. I shouldn't have tried to force her to confront Trixie. Spike forced back the tears that threatened to fall. He felt so ashamed that he flagrantly ignored Twilight's feelings on the matter. He knew Twilight better than the others, he should have known better. Don't feel ashamed. You care about Twilight. Naruto said as he placed a comforting hand on Spike's shoulder. You were only doing what you thought would help her. All you can do now is to be here for her. Naruto realized that despite Spike being known as a baby dragon, he was anything but a baby. He was a deal more mature than Naruto expected for someone of his age. What about you? Are you really going to go through this? That could be dangerous. What happens if the Ursa goes on a rampage? I won't allow that to happen. I have a plan, that's why I challenged her for tomorrow and not today. Spike simply just nodded. Alright man, just be careful. I will. Naruto said as he got up and made his way out of the library. He was sure by now the others had checked his home and his other usual haunts. He knew he would need to go someplace he wouldn't be disturbed or where they would try to stop him from challenging Trixie. The blonde found a nice place near the forest and began to meditate. This is rather foolish Naruto. From the information you have gathered from those Ursa creatures nothing short of a grand warrior or an adult dragon can hope to fight those creatures. You are still a ways off to completely recovering your strength. I don't have much of a choice Kurama. I know it's dangerous, but I don't plan on fighting the Ursa. Worst case scenario I'll rearrange the Everfree forest with some of my jutsu to trap it. I'm more than sure she'll chicken out. I'm not the kid I once was I'll be careful. Very well, just try and keep in mind what's at stake if something goes wrong. Naruto accepted the words as he continued to meditate and waited as the passage of time continued. He opened his eyes and noticed it was nighttime. He wondered just how much time had passed. The sound of tumorous noise echoing drew his attention. As he took a moment to listen he realized much to his horror the sound was traveling towards Ponyville. Trixie was relaxing on her bed as she was thinking about this afternoon's performance. The sound of banging on her door drew her out of her thoughts. Great and powerful Trixie. You've got to help us. Yeah, vanquish the creature so we can watch. Trixie let out a growl as she swung open the door. What do you two want? "Can't you see Trix?" She trailed off as she saw a massive transparent bluer sign in the distance. It had saliva dripping from its mouth and looked every bit of dangerous that creatures of its class was emphasized. Needless to say, Trixie was shocked. "Wait. You brought this here? Are you out of your little pony minds? But you're the great and powerful Trixie," Snips reasoned. "Yeah, remember," reminded Snails. "You defeated an Ursa Major. You imbecilic colts," she snapped as they both recoiled. "I'll handle this." Though hesitant and fearful, Trixie knew that if she ran away from the predator the situation would be worse. Summoning up her magic, she quickly summoned ropes from her caravan in the nearby area. She used one set of ropes to quickly tie shut the maw of the creature and the rest to tie up its limbs. Its arms tied to the building while combining several of the ropes in a knotted formation to tie up its leg. She let out a relieved sigh and smiled thinly. Piece of cake. With a burst of effort, the ropes were snapped to pieces by the creature's impressive strength. "Aw, come on Trixie," Snips complained. "Stop goofing around and vanquish it, eh?" Snails added. Trixie shuddered, gave another gulp, and then had another go at it. This time, her magic called up a storm cloud that cracked out lightning, but only over the Ursa to completely ignore. "Well, that was a dud," Snails said. "Yeah." Snips agreed as he then gave a raspberry. "Come on. Where's all the cool explosions and smoke and stuff like earlier, you know?" "You simpletons." Trixie lied. "Okay." The Ursa let out a bellow of rage as it stomped forward. With yelps of panic they dodged out of the way only for the creature to smash Trixie's home beneath its feet. "No." Trixie wailed as the place that was her home was reduced to mere broken pieces of trash heap. Bellowing in rage, Trixie's horn flared to life as she picked up every sharp or blunt object she could and hurled it at the beast. Everything. Everything she had fought for. Everything she had worked for. Her self-worth. Her image. That caravan to which she paid for signified her struggle, and it was gone now. Trixie, much to her horror, realized her attacks were only irritating the Ursa, not to mention it was much faster than its size dictated. She then her best to leap out of the way only to be caught by half of the creature's paw and sent flying like a rag doll. Pain. Nothing but pain coursed through Trixie as it felt like her body wouldn't move. Trixie found herself paralyzed in fear. The Ursa Major hovered over her, poised as it ready to end her life. Trixie started to cry, tears forming in her eyes and streaming down her distraught face. "Please help. Any pony," she begged. As the paw came soaring down, Trixie closed her eyes, praying for her death to be quick. Suddenly she found herself scooped up. A sudden jolt, signifying a landing, stirred Trixie from her terrified state. She opened her eyes only to see the face of the very stallion from this afternoon. He set her down nearby as several ponies came running up. "We don't know the extent of her injuries, so someone get her medical attention." Naruto then turned to Bulk Biceps, a muscular Pegasus dressed in workout gear that was as tall as Big Mac, but with his body covered in thick layer of bulging muscle and tiny wings. The other was the lime green mint mare known as Lyra Heartstrings, dressed in a jean skirt and black hoodie. "Bulk, Lyra, we need to buy the members of the town some time. We need to hold out until help arrives," he ordered as the two joined him. The sound of the Ursa's roar drowned out the screams and terror of the citizens as the creature continued to invade their town. Every time the creature attacked, Lyra threw up a barrier to cushion whatever she could of the town, while Naruto and Bulk would draw its attention in an effort to lead it away from the town. Much to Naruto's ire, the creature's hide was proving to be rather tough. Hand-to-hand techniques were useless in his current state, and he didn't have any weapons. It would take something more along the lines of his most devastating jutsu techniques, but that would cause a great magnitude of damage to the town, not to mention the possibility of ponies being caught up in it in the ensuing panic. Naruto turned to see Spike and Twilight running up. "You two get out of here. It's too dangerous." "How's an Ursa even here?" "We can worry about that later, what matters now is getting that creature out of here." "I can't stop it anymore," Lyra shouted as she threw up another barrier, sweating cascading down her face when the creature's paw struck her barrier, causing it to shatter and causing the mare to fall back from the force of the magical backlash. "Bulk," Naruto shouted as the Ursa scored a lucky hit, sending the Pegasus flying straight into the hardware store. "Damn it. How are we supposed to stop a thing like this?" As much as Twilight feared rejection, she knew if she didn't do something there wouldn't be any pony left to reject her. Twilight finally got herself ready and used her magic. She used her magic to guide the wind along cattails to create music. It was very soothing. "Twilight." The sound of the music drew Naruto's attention, to which he sent back to the Ura, whom became tired and agitated from the sound of the music. "Nice use of number 16. Spike noted. Twilight then used her magic to grab the water tower and poured out the water. The tower then goes through the barn. Twilight then used her magic to place a cap for the tower. Finally, the music manages to subdue the bear. Twilight then uses her magic to levitate the bear out of town and back through the forests and into a cave. With the threat of the Ursa gone, the panicked masses began to come out from their shelters that were created for such emergencies. The citizens of the town cheered. The other bearers gathered around Twilight to praise the unicorn for saving the town. Unbelievable. Rainbow Dash said in awe. That was amazing. Spike said. Heavens to Betsy. We knew you had ability, but not that much. Applejack stated. I'm sorry. Please, please don't hate me. Twilight fearfully pleaded as she dreaded her insecurity would come to life. Hate you? What are you talking about? The bearers shared a look of confusion. Why, whatever do you mean, darling? The fashionista asked. Well, I know how much you all hated Trixie's showing off with her magic tricks, and I just thought. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Rainbow interrupted. Magic's got nothing to do with it. Trixie's just a loudmouth. Most unpleasant. Rarity added. All had and no cattle. Applejack finished. So you don't mind my magic tricks? Twilight asked. Your magic is a part of who you are, Sugar Cube, and we like who you are. Applejack assured her. We're proud to have such a powerful, talented unicorn as our friend. And after whooping that Ursa's hindquarters, we're even prouder. Rainbow Dash. Twilight gave a smile. You are? Wow, Twilight. How do you know what to do with that Ursa Major? Spike wondered. Well, that's what I was doing when I woke up this evening. I was so intrigued by Trixie's bragging that I was compelled to do a little reading up on them. So it is possible to vanquish an Ursa Major all by yourself. Actually, that wasn't an Ursa Major. That was an Ursa Minor. Oh wow, I take it, we don't even want to know what a major is like, right? Naruto guessed, to which Twilight nodded. What would have even caused it to show up here if it was just a baby? I can only assume that it was cranky because someone woke it up. Twilight guessed as she gave the blonde a questioning look. I assure you, Twi, my intent was to force Trixie to prove her boasts. I spent this evening meditating. I didn't even go into the forest. Naruto promised. And who could have? She trailed off as a bellow of sadness drew their attention. My caravan. Can't believe this. Trixie looked absolutely heartbroken. Despite how much of a pain she was, no one deserved to have their equivalent of their home destroyed. Well, maybe you should have been boasting. Yeah, this is karma. Several other sentiments were mirrored. Hey, don't you think that's a bit much? She was annoying, but that was her home. That's kind of cruel. Thankfully, some of the citizens had enough sympathy to argue against this way of thinking. Look what happened to our town. Yeah, if she never showed up, the Ursa never attacked. Yeah, I bet she led it here to try and showed it off. Me? Trixie cried out in outrage as she shot up, her eyes sparkling with magic. Trixie did no such thing, you insufferable self-righteous hypocrites. If you want someone to blame, then blame the two brats who had the bright idea to bring an Ursa instead of blaming Trixie. She roared as she shot a finger in the direction of Snips and Snails, who shied away in guilt. Snips. Is this true? Asked an older stallion from the audience. He looked to be in his 40s, average height, and was rather muscular in contrast with his portly son. He shared the same coat color, but with gambage-colored mane and jet black eyes. Strong Steel was the town's blacksmith and a stallion who was known for his no-nonsense attitude. But Snips looked down in shame. They realized Trixie was telling the truth. So Trixie was bragging. So what? That give you lot to try and ruin my show. If you did not like my bragging, you could have simply just left or ignored. Trixie was just merely fulfilling her purpose and earning her living. I swear it, Trixie will return. With that, she conjured a burst of smoke to hide herself from view. When it cleared, she could be seen running out of town. Why, that little Rainbow Dash was about to take off, intending to pursue, but was stopped by Twilight. Just let her go. The purple mare said. Maybe someday she'll learn her lesson. This shouldn't have happened. We should have been able to avoid all this. Yeah, if she Rainbow Dash began to badmouth Trixie once more when Naruto cut her off. No rain. He sharply remarked. Both sides are at fault. What? You can't be saying it's any of our faults that this happened. Rainbow Dash reverently rebuked the stallion's statement. Yes, it is. I understand why you all are upset. I'm not defending Trixie's actions. Her attacking the three of you during her performance was way out of line, but the three of you should have been more matured about it. So she was boasting and bragging. So what? She's a showmare. That's her talent, that's her life's ambition, and well, people like that can be grating. Did trying to smash her ego justified what happened? He asked as he gestured to the down. Every pony looked around and winced upon seeing how many buildings were destroyed by the ensuing outcome. Several businesses were going to have to close down for a few days, not to mention the town's money was already stretching thin from having to pay for the injuries and damages from the Nightmare Moon incident. Her career, she could lose it, and she lost her home as well. Can you answer me this? Were your intentions noble in that you wanted to help her see the error of her ways and how it could help her, or were you doing it because what she was doing was bothering you personally? They tried to come up with anything or any argument to refute what Naruto was saying only to realize he was right. Trixie was an arrogant braggart, but no one deserved losing their career or their home. Hell, if they wanted to be technical, Rarity technically did damage to the mayor's private property. We get it, we aren't exactly innocent either. Applejack reluctantly answered. We should have handled the issue with more maturity than we did. Rarity added, feeling ashamed she let herself be baited like some school-age filly. Hey, if she's willing to apologize for attacking us during her show, then we'll settle this issue. Rainbow Dash added. Naruto let out a relaxed sigh. Good, hopefully this is an issue we can avoid again. Now we have to focus on fixing up our town. Mayor then began to calling out to every pony, calling an emergency town meeting to begin making plans on how to manage their resources to repair their town. Snips and Snails meanwhile were being dragged home by their furious and embarrassed parents. There was a real possibility that Hard Steel and the others could lose their business if not their life savings in an attempt to help repair the town out of a sense of responsibility they felt for their children's actions. I'm sorry. Naruto turned, and to his surprise, it was Twilight. What are you apologizing for, Twilight? You were right, I should have never doubted our friends. I should have known better. She was caught off guard as Naruto flashed Twilight a warm smile. It's okay, Twilight. When you're ready to talk about it, I'm here to listen. In fact, I'm sure the others would be happy to learn more about you as well. We're here for you no matter what. Don't blame yourself for why this happened. The others did what they did out of a sense of pride, and they could have chosen to walk away, but like I said earlier, I am not excusing Trixie's actions. She is just as responsible and could have handled the situation better, but she maliciously attacked and belittled our friends for her own egocentric reasons. So don't hold yourself responsible for what happened. We wouldn't be good friends to you if we forced you to do something you weren't comfortable with. So when you're ready, come to us, okay? He finished as Twilight simply nodded, feeling a great deal of pressure being lifted off her mind. The following morning, Twilight Sparkle began dictating a letter to Princess Celestia. Dear Princess Celestia, I have learned a very valuable lesson about friendship. The letter went as follows. I was so afraid of being thought of as a show-off that I was hiding a part of who I am. My friends helped me realize that it's okay to be proud of your talents, and there are times when it's appropriate to show them off, especially when you're standing up for your friends. I also learned another lesson in the form of having faith in my friends. That I have to be willing to trust them in order to build stronger bonds with them and be willing to open my heart up to them to give them the chance to show they care instead of being irrationally fearful of the possibility of being hurt. So Spike with the mustache from Spell 25 came up after he finished writing the letter that Twilight dictated. You finally admit that you're the most talented unicorn in all of Ponyville. Well, Twilight gave a smile. Yeah. But it's nothing to brag about. So, how did it go with Rarity? Spike groaned, fingering his facial hair. She didn't go for the mustache. Twilight waked over to him, you know, Spike, that mustache has nothing to do with who you really are. Maybe you should just try being yourself. Or maybe the mustache wasn't enough. Maybe if I had a mustache and a beard. Twilight groaned. Not this again. Okay. Imagine me with a nice long Fu Manchu type beard. Or maybe a goatee, oh, no, a soul patch. Meanwhile, deep in the Everfree forest, Trixie began to stir. She opened her eyes and looked around, wondering just where in the Tartarus she was. Last thing she remembered, she was running from a manticore whose hunting ground she had stumbled across, and the next thing she knew was darkness. So you're awake. Alarmed, Trixie turned to see another mare, a unicorn, standing at the entrance of the cave. Who are you? How did Trixie get here? You were lucky I stumbled across you. I saved you from the manticore. Allow me to introduce myself, my name is Nightshade. I didn't think many were foolish to travel into the Everfree without preparations. Trixie is no fool. She angrily snapped. She's just down on her luck. Those rotten ponies in Ponyville ruined everything. Those stupid hecklers, that infuriating stallion and that damn lavender mare. They ruined everything. A menacing smile formed on Nightshade's face. You wouldn't happen to mean Twilight Sparkle, would you? Trixie's eyes widened in surprise. You know of her? She narrowed her eyes. Are you from Ponyville as well? She asked as Nightshade sneered in disgust. From that mud pony's town. She spat out. Don't make me laugh. Trixie winced slightly at the racist term. She wasn't a tribalist and wasn't comfortable with such ideals. Nightshade caught herself, realizing she could be alienating a potential ally. Sorry, parents were rather traditional, and it kind of rubbed off. Let's get on another subject matter. I understand your dislike of the Ponyville ponies. They also ruined something important to me, and I want my revenge as well. Miss Trixie, the showmare answered. How do you plan on getting revenge? Considering her anger and sadness was still fresh, Trixie was easily swayed at any idea to get back at the town. Tell me, Trixie, have you ever heard of a magical artifact by the name of the Alicorn Amulet? Within Canterlot Castle, a presence travels along the darkened shades reflected off the light of the moon. The presence moved like liquid as the very atmosphere around it dimmed and bent the light in the area. It shifted and compassed itself into a humanoid shape as it compassed itself in front of a statue. The creature seemed to be a mixture of a dragon, goat, and other species with a long serpentine body with a few cracks within the stone statue. It appears much more is needed. The summit of the nation's leader shall be a venerable place to cause more disharmony. If not for the death of the others I would not have even considered this, so consider yourself lucky, brother. The faint sound of noise echoed from the Sugarcube Corner bakery. Son of a Naruto hissed as he clutched his hand in pain. He had misjudged how far he was from one of the ovens and burned himself. Oh my Neri, are you okay? She quickly hurried over to Cheese Sandwich. The very first thing she did was look at his hand carefully. I'm fine, nothing serious. No words. Let Madam Pinkie cure you. Pinkie said in a serious tone, bringing his hand closer to her. Pinkie then kissed his hand gently. You all better now? Pinkie asked in a rather cute and concerned tone. You're worse than Rain. Naruto murmured as a blush colored his cheeks. At least Rainbow Dash shared a raunchy sense of humor to many unfortunate victims. Sparing no one from one of her jokes if that pony happened to end up in an embarrassing situation or made a flubbing of their words, but for some reason he seemed to be Pinkie's receptacle for all of her teasing and such. Ow, am I the reason you're blushing like that? Can we focus on the baking? It took more willpower than Naruto felt was necessary to prevent himself from whining. It was rather early and he had a few things to do. I'm just teasing you. Pinkie giggled. Someone that cute shouldn't be devious. Naruto thought before quickly changing up what he thought. No, not cute, devious. Devious and evil with her trolling ways. Now back to the baking. With an exaggerated land-ho gesture, Pinkie Pie began to happily bounce her way to the other side of the kitchen. Thankfully it didn't take long for them to make the batch of muffins, thanks to how proficient of a baker Pinkie Pie is. So Neri, what are your plans for today? Pinkie Pie wondered as the blonde brought out a tray of muffins from the oven to cool on the counter. After I visit Bulk and Lyra in the hospital, I'm going to meet up with Twilight at my house to continue a project I've been working on. In fact, the two of us are even going to the park to relax. If you want, you could join us tomorrow. I don't think Twilight would mind it much. Well, that sounds rather fun. If the cakes don't need me, I'll be sure to be there, she said as she waved the blonde off. Naruto made a beeline to the hospital to visit the two ponies whom neither thankfully were going to be staying in the hospital long. Bulk's rather tough hide absorbed most of the damage caused to him by the Ursa's strike, allowing him to come out from the incident with a few busted ribs and dislocated shoulders, along with some scratches. Lyra got off even lighter, thanks to merely just suffering from a case of magical exhaustion that was rather easy to remedy, with a few days of relaxing and not using her magic. After dropping off the consumables, he made his way back to his home, where Twilight had just arrived outside his home with the supplies he requested. Thanks for bringing over these supplies on such short notice, Twilight. Naruto was working desperately to get back to his old level of strength. The issue of the sealed Ashby was hanging over his head, along with bits of information he had retrieved not only from Rainbow Dash, but Luna's only vague recollections. There were at least two of Nightmare Moon's elite still out there, one Pegasus and a unicorn along with the escaped criminals. A good deal of them tended to become bandits. Wild and destructive, they seemed to taking residence in the countryside with theft, assault, and other such crimes becoming more rampant among trade routes. That on one hand was only based on the knowledge that they knew, and it was known that the unknown enemies were far more dangerous. What were they planning? What resources did they have? Those questions along with others were motivating Naruto to essentially recreate and redefine the art of ninjutsu and ninjutsu, more befitting of an equine. He was already working on the theories of chakra he had learned from Hashirama when the latter had taught him his reincarnation technique, but no matter how much Naruto had grown and matured, he was not a scholar or theorist. The battle genius, yes, but when it came to divining that one true answer, it was out of his league, meaning that he would come to a point where he would need help from, say, someone like Celestia, whose wisdom was both vast or ancient, or a pony like Twilight, who was without a doubt a much sharper thinker than he was on defining such subjects. No problem, I was glad to help. The unicorn levitated the various writing supplies. She couldn't help but wonder what Naruto was working on. She sure it had something to do with those scroll things Naruto was often seen with. Twilight gazed around the stallion's home and couldn't help but take notice how simple it was. Sure, there was furniture in nearly every room, but the atmosphere felt more like a place. Those things one should have instead of any atmosphere that conveyed the feeling or sense of a home. If you wouldn't mind setting them on the table, he said, gesturing to the table where he had some of his latest scrolls and ink bottles at. There was one scroll tightly wrapped and tucked to the side of the corner. You spend a lot of time making these scrolls. Are you an artist of sorts? After all, scrolls weren't commonly used by most common ponies. instead being used for events or as a formal means of communicating in a political or military setting. And Equestria unless it connected to a historical event or they were put on display for a museum. I use them for various things. Information and theories that are incredibly important that I solve. Can I read them? She asked with a hint of curiosity at the idea of the theories the blonde was talking about only for Naruto to hastily gather them. Nah, sorry, I'm not finished with them yet. These scrolls are very important to me and I don't want to risk them being damaged. He said as he set them in a cabinet. He turned to see that she was a bit disappointed. Once I'm doing with the scrolls I'd be happy to go over some of their content with you. Her face lit up and she smiled. Thanks Naruto, I'm really excited to see these ideas you wanted to show me. Twilight wanted to figure out what the blonde was hiding thanks to her determination streak. I could say the same about that magic of yours. I'd love to see more of what you'll be able to learn. Anyway, I'm going to take a shower, feel free to make yourself at home. Some time had passed and Twilight had already quickly read through the first of the few books Naruto had on his shelf. Twilight waited for Naruto to get done shower and a good deal of time passed. She started to grow anxious and her attention turned back to the scrolls. She couldn't help but grow curious about what was within the scrolls. Twilight knew she shouldn't, but a quick little peek wouldn't hurt, would it? Carefully Twilight opened the cabinet and brought out a few of the scrolls. After all, she was a very curious pony by nature and one of the things she enjoyed was learning. Upon reading the scrolls she realized she didn't understand its contents at all. Okay, this might be a little more difficult than I thought. She thought to herself as she levitated a piece of parchment to take down some notes. Twilight was so lost in the notes she didn't notice the sound of the running water stopping. Twilight, what are you doing? Twilight jolted, her loss of concentration caused the ink bottle she was bringing over her spill over the scrolls. Naruto dashed to the table as he scooped up some of the ruined scrolls. It had taken him days to come up with the numbers along with weeks to being able to afford and gather material. Months until he finally felt comfortable enough to use hooves all that time. Naruto couldn't help but feel both hurt and angry. Twilight meanwhile wore a look of shock her face. Her ears were folded down on her head and were shaking her head from side to side, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry Naruto. I can replace the material and I can help. You've done enough. The tone the stallion used came out much colder than he intended. Naruto. The remorse could be heard in her cracking voice as her shoulders dropped and she timidly looked upon the blonde. I spent weeks on that and you just go and muck it up. This time his voice was decidedly angry. I didn't mean. What kind of friend would do something like this? Just leave. The comment came off much meaner than the blonde would ever attend for a war. The progress he made wasn't something he could so easily replicate. After all, there was a reason why he had so many scrolls and random theories. They were concepts he planned on revisiting. Naruto winced at the sound of a slammed door and the faint sound of crying in the distance. I'm surprised by how harsh you were to that pony. She ruined my hard work. I didn't intend to come off as so mean, but I was just so angry. Recreating your progress shouldn't take that long, should it? It'll set me a day or two to remember and write up everything again. Twilight's distraught face came to his mind. While Naruto was upset he didn't want his friendship with Twilight ruined over it. All he would need is a nice long walk to cool, then he would find and apologize to Twilight. He cursed himself for losing his cool like that. Especially so soon after Twilight's fearful revelations of her losing a friend over something he did. The more he thought about it, the more shameful he felt for allowing himself to lose control of his emotions like that. He trekked within the forest and away from his home. Minutes passed as Naruto tried and failed to come up with an apology to Twilight. He was trying to come up with something sincere beyond a mere I'm sorry, but nothing came to mind. He arrived to the library hoping that Twilight would be willing to listen to him. Naruto knocked on the door. The door suddenly swung open. Put him up. Naruto literally could not react as the dragon attacked him. Despite his gusto, Spike's attacks were quite ineffectual as Naruto was able to react and move faster than Spike can punch. Spike, listen. He tried to reason with the angry dragon. You're going to pay for making Twilight cry. He shouted at him as he maneuvered Naruto into a corner by a bookcase. Spike, listen, I didn't mean the sound of a bite, and the sensation of teeth caused Naruto to pause in mid-sentence. With a yelp he swung his limb, sending Spike flying into a bookcase, causing an avalanche of books to fall on them. Naruto hurriedly rushed over and cleared the books. You jerk, picking on mares isn't good enough. You have to attack poor defenseless baby dragon too. Spike accused the blonde despite the fact in any other situation he would be offended at the claim of being a baby. Defenseless my foot, he silently remarked as he glanced at the bite marks. I didn't mean to hurt Twilight, Spike. Just let me explain my side. He pleaded in hopes that Spike would stop attacking him long enough for him to explain his side. Alright, but if you try anything funny. He threatened while giving the blonde the stink eye. Naruto rolled his eyes and suppressed a sigh. "Trust me, I won't," he said as he explained what happened in detail. Currently Twilight's face was in the large white poofy pillow of her bed. Tears streamed down her cheeks, dampening her fur and the pillow and bedsheet. She sobbed loudly into the pillow. "Twilight, it's Naruto." Hearing his voice on the other end drew her attention. Her face left the pillow. "Listen, I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't mean to come off as so cold or to insinuate you weren't a real friend. I was wrong for getting so angry and risking our friendship over an accident. I don't want you to ever think I would give you up as my friend because of something like that. Your feelings are more important to me than some scrolls, so please don't cry anymore, and I'm sorry. That's all I wanted to say. I'll leave you two alone now." Naruto left after the apology, wanting to give the unicorn some space. Naruto walked by Spike with a nod as he wordlessly left the library, leaving the young reptile a dilemma. On one hand he was his rival for Rarity's affection. Despite the obvious fact that Naruto was completely blind to the mare's affections and Rarity's own willingness to blind herself to her feelings, out of fear of what that meant to the nature of their relationship. On the other hand, Naruto treated Spike as simply just another friend and didn't make things awkward by one way or another, bringing up that he was a dragon. That was pretty cool. At best the two of them were casual acquaintances who knew and interacted with each other when Twilight was there than having any genuine guy bonding time. Spike then realized he was going to have to get to know more about this rival of his if he was going to form an opinion. Despite being able to give his apology, Naruto still felt in a crappy mood. Was about the third of the way home when he heard voices. His attention was further garnered when they got louder. "I should have known a failure like you wouldn't have any money." Though he didn't recognize the voice, he couldn't mistake the sound of that crying. He got closer and saw some pony he had never seen before was accosting Fluttershy. His mane and tail were of a russet color with his coat being the complexion of olive. He was wearing a dirty white t-shirt and ripped blue jeans and was built like your usual Pugasi, but far more lanky with his head sort of lopsided. Naruto didn't know what this stallion's deal was, all he knew was that he wanted to get him away from Fluttershy. "Get away from her," Naruto shouted as the olive Pegasus seemed to register his voice before making a mad dash at him. Naruto immediately reacted and punched the crazy pony, sending him flying across the field and landing with a thud. "Fluttershy, are you okay? Can you move?" Fluttershy looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She was bleeding a bit from her nose, and her face was also slightly bruised, not to mention the outfit she was wearing had dirty stains and ripped around the shoulder area where it looked like the fabric was yanked. "Who the hell are you? Another pathetic friend of Fluttercrease?" the Pegasus taunted. "Figures a loser like her would hang out with wingless hacks." Naruto let out an inhuman snarl as the air around him grew hot. For the first time in years his eyes turned into those familiar crimson slits of a feral animal. Ever since his partnership with Kuruma, the malevolence that tainted the chakra had essentially vanished. There had been only one other time he had been this angry, and he had killed the one responsible. Leave now. It took all of his willpower to suppress the very urge to kill the pony. If there was anything that could trigger Naruto giving in to murderous impulses, it was hurting Fluttershy. Unlike with Rarity, he didn't think he could forgive himself if he traumatized her further by taking a life in front of her eyes. Fluttershy was so gentle and sweet it was inconceivable that anyone would bear her any ill will. The idiot wisely chose to leave. Naruto scooped Fluttershy up and placed her on his back. He made the trek back to her cottage, seeing as it was closer. During the trek Fluttershy seemed to slip between falling asleep to being awake and unfocused. Naruto nearly bust down the door when he arrived to the cottage. His arrival startled her animals, who immediately readied themselves for a fight. "Guys, please, I need your help." He wasn't sure if they understood him. He was never a person who got along with animals after all. Fluttershy's hurt and he had to keep calm for Fluttershy's sake. To Naruto's surprise, Angel was the first to step forward, and suffice to say Naruto wasn't used to the rabbit showing any other expression besides a grimace. "Angel, don't give me shit. I get it, you don't like me or any pony at all for that matter, but please, Fluttershy needs help. Doesn't that mean anything to you at all?" The pony had been right, Angel simply did not like most ponies or anyone for that matter. One of the few creatures he asked cared about, even if he was a brat to her, was in the stallion's hands and needed help. Even if Angel could care less about the stallion, his mama needed his help. Angel seemed to communicate with the other animals before pulling at Naruto's leg to lead him somewhere. He placed Fluttershy on the bed as the animals soon returned with medical supplies. It would have been impossible not to pick up some first aid considering the people in his life. Naruto got right to work, disinfecting her wounds and wrapping them up with bandages. "Sorry, but I have to make sure it's tight." Fluttershy's eyes began to tear up a bit. He looked at her and brought his hoof to her head and gave a gentle rub. I understand. This shouldn't have happened." he softly muttered himself. "What would inspire some pony to do such a thing? It's okay. You saved me from that bully who was trying to mug me." Maybe it was because how safe she was now, or perhaps how vulnerable she was and felt the need to be close to some pony. Whatever the reason, Fluttershy hugged Naruto, startling the blonde quite a bit. She blushed a bit and whispered into his ear. "You're my hero." For as long as Naruto remembered, he considered Fluttershy like a little sister. He never had a sibling and as a result interpreted the feeling of always wanting to protect Fluttershy as a big brother would, but at that moment he realized something. Fluttershy reminded him of his wife, that sweet and gentle nature that she had along with a drive to help those around her, except for one thing. Fluttershy never had someone to inspire her to seek courage and grow. She never had someone to stop her from going the wrong way. Yes, she had friends, that much were true, but she didn't have someone to give her the confidence to grow. Will you be okay?" he asked as her hold on him tightened. "Can you please stay?" Right now Fluttershy really needed a friend. Naruto's warmth and presence took her mind off the awful memories of her fillyhood that was resurfacing. Some time had passed and before she knew it, Fluttershy began to drift off. The sound of his heartbeat and his warmth put her at ease enough for her to go to sleep. Angel, the ever-vigilant watcher, watched the scene unfold. For some time he had figured that Fluttershy's crippling shy nature would prevent her from finding a mate that would be good for her. It seemed like the stallion with her was at least adequate in some regards. As for the others, well, he was going to have to test him to see if he was worthy. Some time would pass and after the day's tiring events, Naruto would soon fall asleep as well. Fluttershy, time to wake up Fluttershy. As she started to stir, she was clearly relaxed and didn't realize that she had fallen asleep. "Wow, what happened? Did I fall asleep?" she asked while looking up at him sleepily. "It's morning," he said as Fluttershy softly gasped. "Oh my. Did I keep you here all night? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." Before she could continue her endless stream of apologies, Naruto cut her off. "It's okay. I already fed your animals." Which in itself was a difficult task. How the hell was any pony capable of deciphering 12 the difference between 12 types of seeds that looked alike? "Breakfast is downstairs and I contacted Rarity and she'll be here soon." "Thank you." After ensuring that Fluttershy was indeed fine, Naruto left back to his own cottage with promises to return soon to check up on her. Naruto. To his surprise, Twilight was coming towards him wearing a saddle with scrolls sticking out of them. "Twilight." The two paused, their eyes met as an awkward silence occurred between them. "I'm sorry." Both of them spoke. I didn't mean to come off as so harsh with you." "No, it's my fault. You asked me not to bother your scrolls and I didn't listen. I don't blame you for being mad. Still, it's just some silly pieces of parchments. Actually, that's what I'm here about." With a dazzling smile, Twilight's horn glowed as she levitated some of the scrolls. "Check it out," she insisted as Naruto grabbed one of the scrolls and opened it. What, how?" Naruto asked in awe. The handwriting couldn't have been his because it was far too neat, but all the sealing code matched up perfectly. "I remembered all the content of scrolls down to the very detail. So I copied them and recreated them from scratch." Also, she levitated the rest of the scrolls. Naruto grabbed one and opened it. His eyes skimmed over and he gasped in awe. "At the solution, how?" "Well, your magic, or chakra as you called it in the scroll, kind of reminded me of how unicorns channel their magic. So I did some research and see if those gates you mentioned matched anything in unicorn biology. I wrote up some notes and made theories based off of Pony's biology and adjusted the notes to match." Did I do okay?" "Okay?" he shouted. In his happiness, Naruto ran over and pulled Twilight into a hug. "You're freaking amazing, Twilight." He was such an idiot. Why didn't he account for the biological differences between human and an equine's body? Since he didn't have magic like a unicorn, he supposed the idea never occurred to him. "You're welcome." Twilight Sparkle was stunned by the display. She wasn't used to such affectionate displays by anyone who wasn't family or the princess. Especially not members of the opposite gender, and as such she couldn't help but blush. Regaining his senses, Naruto brought the hug and looked a bit bashful. "Sorry, got carried away." "Twilight, think that maybe we can work on some of my theory when you have time?" A bright smile formed on Twilight's face. "I'd like that. I'm curious about these human creatures and this chakra you had written down. I don't think I read anything about either of them." "I'd be happy to tell you." Unknown to the two of them, Spike had followed after Twilight, whose only explanation to him was that she needed to talk to Naruto. Happening upon the scene sparked an idea in Spike's head. He could kill two birds with one stone. If he hooked Naruto and Twilight up, his sister and all and blood would have a nice and caring special pony, and that would make him wooing Rarity all the more easier. "Spike, my man, you are a genius," he happily thought to himself. Like before, Twilight Sparkle dictated her latest letter to the princess on what she learned. "Dear Princess Celestia. I learned 2 important lessons today. One about having respect for each other's property. If you're not careful, accidents can happen and you can end up destroying something very valuable to someone. Also a true is always willing to apologize and to let bygone be bygones. This incident taught me that an argument or emotional outburst cannot sever the bond of true friends. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Peace out.